All right, everybody. So welcome back to the channel. This is the personal channel here. This is someone who I've done talk shows and audios, whatever you want to call it, for years now. Is a colleague. We go all the way back to school. He's my predecessor at the Signal, which is the student paper at Georgia State. Everybody, welcome in Mr. Akiem Bailum. Akiem, how you doing today, man?
I am absolutely tremendous. I'm just, as I say all the time, I'm trying to be on Shaw's level. That's the thing. Like, I'm absolutely tremendous. For those that probably don't know who I am yet, I write at beyondthew.com. I also write for Queen Ballers and for Prep Girls Hoops South Carolina site. We just wrapped up our state playoffs, and I was literally crisscrossing the Palmetto State, going from game to game to game. We just had our state championships at Akiem at the Convocation Center in Akiem. So I had to, kind of recharge my battery after that. I'm about to hit the road again for, doing the travel schedule. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. But yeah, I'm good. I'm living. I'm obtaining and maintaining.
In short, Akiem is on here because he knows more about women's basketball than I do. All right. Now that we got all that out the way, I'm gonna let that breathe a little bit. This is what the people have come for, King. This is what the people have come for. All right, we're gonna start with talking about Iowa and UK, because that was the first mini appetizer of big names, former USA teammates Ryan Howard and Caitlin Clark. First of all, how did you feel about that performance? If you got to catch up with the highlights or watch the game or anything like that.
That performance, I taking nothing away from Ryan Howard. I mean, she ended up with 28 points, but Caitlin Clark, I feel like this is within the women's basketball community, like, people have been really ranting and raving about Caitlin Clark. And, I felt like this was one of those players that we wanted to see, like, okay, she's a freshman. So, going into the tournament is an entirely different animal than, playing either, a season or playing within one's conference. But Caitlin Clark, in the first couple of games that she has played, particularly that game against Kentucky, has looked like a cheat code. I mean, it's so amazing. And this is, like I said, this is really, like, if people did not know who Caitlin Clark is before this tournament, oh, they know who she is now. Because if I remember correctly, I forgot her stat line, but I believe she had 35 points, I believe.
Yeah, 35.
35 points. And at halftime of that game against Kentucky as a team had 22. Caitlin Clark had 24 by herself. I mean, you want to talk about, like,
crazy. She's crazy, man. She's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, she's one of those players that is all of a sudden rekindling a debate on if freshmen should be allowed to go into the WNBA draft, because you just and not only that, like, she can score from anywhere on the floor, can shoot threes, can mid-range, like, can hit her free throws, is a very, very proficient passer. I mean, and this is, on an Iowa team that is starting to have a history of sending players to the league. I mean, Megan Gustafson came out of Iowa. So, I mean, this is, I felt that the game between Iowa and Kentucky would be a little bit closer, because I know everybody was thinking, okay, Caitlin Clark, Ryan Howard. But the way that it turned out, like, don't let that final score of 86-72, don't let that fool you, because for much of the game, it was a blowout. So I was just thinking, like, wow, like, this is, Caitlin Clark is a walking cheat code, like, for real.
Yeah. And that was the thing I said. And I did the reaction, but copyright stuff, like, the sound was taken off, so I just took it off. I put it on private. Anyways, but, like, what I was saying in there was just, it's like, like you said, throughout the season, the women's basketball community knew what Caitlin Clark was about. On the outside world, it was literally, they were just hearing about Paige and maybe, like, Zaya Cook every now and again in South Carolina, because, people love Don Staley. But inside, everybody knew about Caitlin Clark. So it was kind of like, this is her Steph Curry moment, to me, in my opinion, of, like, Steph back in '08. Everybody in Davidson and SoCon, whatever conference Davidson was in 2008, they knew about Steph Curry and who Steph Curry was. The world didn't know about Steph Curry until he got on that stage in March Madness and did what he did. You look at Caitlin's page right now, you go to her Twitter, you refresh, just keep refreshing it. She is going from, I think she went from like the first time I clicked at something that someone tagged her in, she had like 4,000 followers. And then like I looked at it again like later when somebody else tagged her in something, and she has 7,000, over 7,000 now. And I saw on Instagram, KD shouted her out, and all these celebrities are talking about her, Sue Bird, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just like, she's been like this. Like, she's been doing this all year. But it's just nice to see her finally, like you said, have that coming out party. And then on the side of Ryan Howard, I said this in the thing, very disappointing performance, man. Very disappointing performance. Like you said, she came out with 28 points, but a couple of those buckets were garbage time threes, back-to-back threes in the final 30 seconds when the game was already in hand. So, you take that away, that's 22 points, okay? And then by about midway through the third quarter, she was shooting 3 of 12. You got to do better than that, right? You're supposed to be the number one pick. We go back to talking about Texas and Charlie Collier. You say you got Charlie Collier making a run because she's the number one pick. Next year's number one pick is Ryan. So if you're next year's number one pick, you got to do better than that in an elimination game. And that takes me back to West Virginia. West Virginia let me down because, I'm hating, and I pick SFA to upset Tech. So now it's up to West Virginia to keep doing what they got to do to keep my bracket somewhat respectable. Okay. And then Kaiser Gondrajic, she has a great game, right? She affects the game in other different ways. Had a great pass, you know what I'm saying? Had a great move, but it was her only bucket. The great move for the bucket, that was her only bucket. She had 3 points as a senior. You're trying to get drafted. You're trying to go to the league. You can't do that in an elimination game, Kaiser. So I'm calling Kaiser out on that as well. Kaiser, and then Ryan over here. I'm calling out everybody. Ryan from Tennessee, Raina Davis, excuse me. I'm talking about Ryan
Davis,
from Kentucky. Rania Davis. Rania Davis?
I think it's either Rene or I forgot the actual pronunciation.
Okay. Because I was watching a broadcast because I was calling her like Renia, and then like the broadcast was saying Renaya. So I just been saying Renaya since then.
We just go with Renaya.
Okay. We're just gonna roll with Renaya. But Renaya Davis had like 12 points. It's eliminated. You're about to go to the league. You're trying to be a top 5 pick. In an elimination game, you got to give me more than 12 points. Okay, so now back to Ryan. So her 28 points, okay, it was 28 with an asterisk because if you actually watched it, she was just struggling. You got to step up for your team. You got to be more aggressive. You got to be selfish in times like that because your team's back is on against the wall. And Caitlin, she stepped up to the challenge in both games, both first games. She's averaging 29 right now in the tournament. Ridiculous. And here we go.
Here we go.
Give it up one more time, Keaton. Give it up one more time, Keaton.
Absolutely. Here we go.
So like I said, if you don't know anything else about women's basketball, you know about this one player because she's been famous since she was about 2. Paige Beckers, man. Paige Beckers, man. Crazy. The whole 9. She's an absolutely outstanding player. Caitlin versus Paige, when you ask who's a better player right now, I'm going to say Paige. There's a reason why Paige is Paige, and there's a reason why Caitlin is Caitlin. You talk about defense. There's been a lot of times during the season where you catch Caitlin with her hands down. Her hands have been up. This tournament, I've been watching this stuff, but, for the most part, she's just been lazy on the defensive side of the ball. But she stepped it up in the tournament from what I've seen so far, and that's really kind of the big separation thing. And then the fact that Paige is so efficient. Caitlin shoots a lot. Shooters shoot to get hot, and shooters shoot when they get hot to stay hot. So, that's kind of Caitlin's thing. But Paige can get you 24, 20 points, 20-plus points on 8 shots. You know what I'm saying? Paige is just like, her efficiency is crazy, and her ability to make her teammates better. Shouts out to Iowa as well. Like I always say with McKenna Warnock and they got Monica as well. Both of those players, those are formidable players. They got a great lineup with Gabby Marshall as well. And Kate Martin. So they have a good lineup or whatever. They have a good nucleus. UConn has all the superstars, but at the beginning of the season, someone commented this. I forgot who it was, but shouts out to you. Of at the beginning of the season, I wasn't sure if UConn was going to make the Final Four because that's how kind of just I don't know what the word would be. I don't know if it'll be inadequate, but that's how kind of not good. They didn't look very good at the beginning of the season. It's kind of like Page was carrying them. They were blowing out teams, but excuse me,
They
there
were
were a
winning
lot
a
of
lot of
holes in
games
their game.
because of Page.
They were winning a lot of games because of Page. And once they got down to the SEC, they say, "See the SEC, you get tough, huh?" All y'all let me down. All y'all talked all that trash about the SEC. I bought into it, did it with my bracket, and all y'all jokers let me down. So I don't want to hear it next season. I'm not listening to y'all anymore. But
right,
you know, they go through that rough patch, lose at Arkansas, almost lose in Tennessee, and then you know, game goes down to the wire again against South Carolina, and I'm like, man, it's looking like Paige hit big shots in both of those games for them to win. You know, she wasn't playing well in both of those games. She played well in the Arkansas loss, but she wasn't playing well in both of those wins. Well, South Carolina, she played well. There was only one game she didn't play well, and that was the
right.
Tennessee game, and she hit the biggest shot. So it's just like I was just very concerned about him. Olivia looked like she was underperforming. Kristen, she looked like she was underperforming. She went through a slump middle of the season, and you're like, you supposed to be a number one player too. Like, what is y'all doing? You know, Anna goes down in the middle of the season, and then Nikki steps up in her place. And the first time I'm seeing her is that Arkansas game. She gets the ball and she don't know what to do with it. Like she never held a basketball in her life in the final 2 minutes. And that was a turnover, you know what I'm saying? Or a bad shot or whatever. So I always think back to that play when I think about her growth. But she's grown so much since then. I'm shouting out Nikki. I always say this. And Nikki now looks like a formidable college player. And then she went out with the injury. So now I'm worried again.
Yeah. Once again.
What are your thoughts about Connecticut? What are your thoughts about Page? And what are you looking at in this matchup?
You know, the thing is, I think that this is really a special matchup because, you know, lots of times, especially in big tournaments like this, lots of times when you highlight players, lots of times you're highlighting maybe two juniors, or maybe you're highlighting a senior and a junior, or maybe you're highlighting two seniors that are, you know, on the verge of being drafted. But it is very, very, very rare that you have an opportunity to really highlight two superstar freshmen. I mean, we're talking about like, you know, two players. You know, obviously there was so much hype around Paige Bueckers. And now because of Caitlin Clark's coming out party, you know, in this tournament, now all of a sudden everybody knows who she is. So, you know, like I was saying, within the women's basketball community, this was one of those matchups that I think people was kind of putting, you know, this sort of matchup like on their brackets because it was just something that you just wanted to see. Just like Iowa and Kentucky was a matchup that you just had to see because of Caitlin Clark and Ryan Howard, who, like you said, is going to be the next year's number one overall into the W. Like, this is really a special matchup because, you know, this is one of those games that now people are going to be thinking, okay, you know, we want to see this year in and year out. And I feel like it's also great for Iowa as a program because Iowa, as I was saying earlier, is one of those schools that, as far as women's basketball, gets overlooked. When you talk about like the landscape of women's basketball at the college level, you talk about UConn, you talk about Stanford, you talk about South Carolina, you talk about Louisville, you talk about Texas A&M, you talk about so many of these great schools, Baylor, you talk about so many. Right, exactly. You talk about so many of these schools, but you know, Iowa is one of those schools that kind of sort of maybe gets overlooked. Maybe it's because, you know, they're in the middle of the country. Maybe it's because maybe they don't necessarily, you know, have the recent history of some of these other schools. But
and by the way, they went to the Elite Eight in 2019. I didn't even know that until I was watching the Caitlin interview the other day, and I was like, they went to the Elite Eight a couple years ago. But continue.
Exactly. People forget that. People forget that. And, people still, they still kind of remember because, as like I was mentioning, Megan Gustafson, she was a, great player for Iowa, now is in the WNBA. And if I remember correctly, I don't know if they've already retired her jersey at Iowa yet, but if they haven't, it's only a matter of time before they do, but I think they already did. But yeah, I feel like this in many ways, and I do have UConn winning this game, by the way, but I feel like in a lot of ways, this is kind of something that I think people will start thinking, okay, Iowa sort of maybe has something going here. So I think that in coming years, I feel like people are going to start thinking, all right, like I said, Iowa sort of has something here. So that's going to be like, especially, and it helps their recruiting too. So this is going to be something where people think, okay, they're building something at Iowa, kind of like they built something at Oregon, around Satu Sabally and Sabrina Ionescu. So I think that this, like I said, I think UConn is going to win this game, but I think over the next couple years, I really think this will help Iowa.
Right. And when you're just talking about the impact of this game, I can liken it to on the NBA level. I know it's kind of like the basic thing, especially between us, on our pod. Shout out to A-League Show. That's our podcast. But Luca and Trey. Of that, I'm saying, like, a big matchup that, they've kind of been compared to their entire like season, at least in the women's basketball world. It's kind of been like Paige Bueckers is great, and we appreciate all the publicity and attention she's bringing to the sport, with the first network, Fox network game in college women's basketball history, and all those things that she does for the sport. But hey, a freshman is leading the country in scoring right now, and no one's talking about it on a major scale. Like, she's not getting the same type of press that this Paige Bueckers girl is getting. And it's kind of been like that the entire season of, is Caitlin better than Paige, even though she doesn't get as much attention? Why doesn't Caitlin get as much attention as Paige? And it's kind of the same way in the NBA, where it was like, why are people talking about Luca and not Trey, and stuff like that? And then even on the WNBA, since where it was a nice rivalry going before Sabrina got hurt, but with Kennedy Carter and Sabrina Ionescu, of why is Kennedy not getting as much attention as Sabrina? She's a rookie, averaging 20 right now. Both of them got hurt, and the thing got fizzled out. But just how do you see this on the impact of women's basketball and the sport?
It's great. Absolutely. It's great. Like, the more eyeballs to women's basketball, the better. And, I was about to bring up the exact same thing that you brought up, boss. I was about to bring up the exact same thing with Sabrina Ionescu and Kennedy Carter. Like, that was the comparison that I was about to make. And that'll be another one of those storylines that will be interesting to follow, especially as we're getting closer and closer to whenever the WNBA releases their schedule. Like, whenever they release New York Liberty versus Atlanta Dream, like, that's going to be one of the first games I'm going to have on my on my schedule to watch on League Pass for sure. But yeah, I think that the impact, like I said, this game, and especially the fact that we're talking about like two freshmen, like, it's one of those games that, like I said, is really, really, really big for the sport. And I feel like that it's kind of one of those games where it could possibly arguably be the biggest game as far as this whole tournament that's not a Final Four game. So, just because,
for sure.
Yeah, just because of, the fact that you have the opportunity to really highlight two, marquee players that already have WNBA written all over them. Like, I think that is going to be huge for the sport, like I said, long term going forward.
Man, Keem, I appreciate you a billion times, a billionfold, all that good stuff for hopping on. Last second, I hit up Keem literally like an hour ago, and I was like, hey, can you hop on Zoom to talk about basketball? But yeah, I
You
appreciate
know
it
I'm
as
always
always.
ready, man.
Oh yeah, hey, I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it. A-League coming back soon on Swish's channel. Shout out to Swish. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, if you are
Mhm.
new to the channel, this is the road to 2K. We're coming back. All these things, we're gonna lead it up so you guys have something to watch and some appetizers leading up to this big game on Saturday. You guys take care. Be easy. Keem, let the people know where they can find you, man.
As always, Akiem Bailum, Akiem Bailum, Prep Girls Hoop South Carolina, Queen Brawlers, and as always at Beyond the W. So check those out. Till next time.
Appreciate it so much, y'all. Y'all be easy.